I'm waiting for, but I'm waiting for, Maria asked me to wait for a second.
Mr. Waters is here. We're waiting for...
Let me begin by welcoming all of you, thanking for you to be here on such a horrific day outside with the weather. Thank you very much for all being here today. At this time, I'd like to call to order the September meeting of the MDX Board of Directors. Now we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Gutierrez, if you would so honor us with leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Secretary, can you please have a roll call?
Mr. Board, Mr. Brown, Mr. Ferre, I know he's here, Mr. Gonzalez, Ms. Gutierrez, Mr. Meyer,
Present.
Mr. Vasquez, Mr. Walters, Ms. Weinberg, Secretary Wolf, Treasurer Rodriguez-Pina,
Here.
Vice Chair Fano, Chair Martinez.
Here.
We have
Form, great. I'm going to, any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I'm going to ask that the agenda be approved as so prepared.
Yeah, I think we have to wait for Mr. Ferre before we move forward. He would be number 7.
Okay, so let's do this. While we do that, let's do citizens' comments while we wait. Can we do citizen comments while we wait for Mr. Ferre, Council?
Yes.
Does anyone have any citizens' comments at this time? Hearing no citizens' comment, we're going to move on. We need Mr. Ferre for the approval of the minutes, but we can do the executive director's report, I believe, because there's not a moving issue on that. Is that correct, Mr. Rodriguez?
Absolutely.
So let's do that now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Few things since the last board meeting. Staff attended the IBTTA annual meeting in Denver, Colorado. Mr. Ferre, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Rodriguez-Pina, Mr. Brown accompanied us. I do want to congratulate Mr. Toledo for being elected to the Board of Directors at IBTTA. I will tell you that at IBTTA, we had the opportunity not only to see what other parts of the world and what other parts of the country are doing with providing mobility solutions, but we confirmed that we're heading in the right direction in looking at technology, exploring how to best use our assets. The whole concept of using the inside shoulder for express buses is actually being done in Colorado. It's called the Mountain Express up to the Rocky Mountains. When there's peak season and visitors, people use the shoulder to get up, and Federal Highway Administration has already given guidelines of how to design these things. On September 15th, MDX presented updates on the 874 extension, the 836 projects to the MPO Board of Directors. We had the ability to discuss our express bus service not only on 836, but on 874 and 878. We discussed the Dolphin Park and Ride. We showed the video of the 836 improvements, including the interchange at 87th Avenue. And we also gave a preview of future XT lanes or technology lanes. It was very well received. We have followed up with the commissioners and given them a link to the video so they can share it with constituents. On September 17th, I had the privilege of riding a bicycle on the M Path and the future Underline. I was accompanied by members of the Underline and the Miami Foundation, our MPO Secretariat, Executive Director, and the Transit and Public Works Director. The idea was to ride the path and understand what improvements are going to be made and what could be made. How does MDX get involved? The path crosses 878 and on US 1. There's already an M path that crosses over the facility. The Underlying group is looking at options of trying to keep them at grade and go underneath or along our right-of-way and access the Dadeland Station. That's where there could potentially be coordination. Mr. Toledo is going to be meeting with their group and further coordinating those efforts. On September 19th, 20th, and 21st, and this is kind of a preview, MDX held focus groups with community. We held six focus groups, 3 in English, 3 in Spanish. This is going to be coupled with other efforts, but the goal of this, board members, is to come back to you with a comprehensive communications campaign or strategy as we select our new vendors, we get into the new year, what messages work, what they don't work. In a nutshell, people don't see the difference between MDX, Florida's Turnpike, the county, anybody. Tolls are tolls, nobody likes them, move forward. So we're going to come back with a full report and recommendations through the PC, the Public Communications and Intergovernmental Committee. Two other items. One of them is going to be on the agenda, so I'm not going to get into it very much, but I am extremely gratified and proud that this year we will be able to issue a cashback toll dividend. It's something that the industry has asked me to share with them, because the notion of putting our toll payers at the same level as our bondholders, as shareholders, and returning to them a portion of their tolls if we are more efficient and we operate efficiently is innovative. And many people have been asking us how they could do it and how they can get in the same light. Finally, we held our 11th annual MDX for Business Conference, September 22nd. I want to thank the chairman and the treasurer for attending and addressing the audience. Board members, we had over 350 people register for the meeting. We had 28 exhibitors. Exhibitors from local, state, and federal government were there. Our keynote speaker was the Deputy Secretary of the Virginia Department of Transportation, Ms. Gratigny Johnson. We got incredibly good reviews. Over 70% of the people that attended rated it excellent, and the remainder rated it good. The number one reason for attending was the networking. But the most important part of the conference, and for the board members that were there, is we're able to tell the community that 35% of every dollar that we've spent on a service contract at MDX has gone to a small local business. And the reason the community participates is because it's not just talk. There's actual action. And to that, I want to thank Helen Cordero and our entire staff who put this together. It was a informative meeting, and we look forward to doing it again. With that, I conclude my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Because we are pressed for time.
Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Hi, Board Member Weinberg. I just chimed in a few minutes ago. I didn't want to interrupt the director. Thank you for that report, Javier, and I apologize for being late. I had dialing in issues. I'm still out of town.
I'm glad you're on via telephone, Board Member Weinberg. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the record, I have no conflict with any of the items on the agenda. I'll go ahead and mute now unless I have something to say later. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair Martinez?
Yes.
This is Shelley. I was on the other line, and I didn't realize I had to cross over. I'm sorry. I'm here, and there's no conflict.
Let's do this. I'm going to modify the agenda, because for us to maintain quorum, we're going to need to move some of the items that are the consent and regular agenda items up. So if everyone's accepting, we're going to skip 2, 4, 5, and 6, and 7 go directly to the consent and regular agendas. And then once we conclude those items, we can go back to the items that do not require a vote from the board. Does anyone have any objection to that at this time?
I do not.
Huh?
No objection.
And I've set the agenda in that capacity. Mr. Counsel, I'm going to do it in that capacity. So at this time, if you could ask for any conflicts before we go to the voting.
Do any members of the board have to report any conflicts with any items on the agenda?
None.
Seeing none, we
No
move forward.
conflict.
The consent agenda. A, please, Mr. Counsel.
Travel approval, October 24th, 25th, 2016, trip to Bonita Springs, Florida, by Board Member Weinberg and Mr. Rodriguez, the Executive Director, to attend the Team Florida Quarterly Meeting.
Does anyone wish to move? Moved by Ms. Gutierrez, seconded by Mr. Meyer. Open for discussion. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Discussion is closed. This item is approved by consent agenda. Anyone have any objections? Hearing none, item passes. I want to do, can we do B and C together first, and then we'll do A last, if that's acceptable, Counsel?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
We'll just vote on B and C individually, but we can do them together. MDX Work Program number 87410, State Road 874 Ramp Connector to 128th Street. Approval of MDX Resolution 16-24 for the purchase of parcels 117, 701, 702, and 802. endorsed by the Joint Budget and Finance and Operations Committee on September 20th, 2016. Item C, MDX Work Program Number 87410, State Road 874 Ramp Connector to 128th Street. Approval of MDX Resolution 16-23 for the purchase of parcels 118A, 118B, 118C, 118D, 700, and 803. Endorsed by the Joint Budget and Finance and Operations Committee on September 20th, 2016.
Move this item. Moved by Mr. Meyer.
So moved.
Seconded by Treasurer Rodriguez-Pena. Moved and seconded. These items were extensively discussed at the Joint Budget and Finance and Operation Committee meetings. Mr. Toledo, does any board members here who was not present wish to have any questions to staff for this matter? Adam?
No questions.
Hearing that the item has been thoroughly discussed at the operations, discussion is closed. All in favor say aye. To item B first. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Now to item C. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Both items pass unanimously. Item A. I'm sorry. Who is it? Thank you. Item A, please, counsel.
Approval of the fiscal year 2016 cashback toll dividend, endorsed by the Joint Budget and Finance and Operations Committee on September 20th, 2016.
Chair Martinez, I would like the honor of making the motion, please.
I am on, Chair, Vice Chair, I couldn't think of anyone else that I would rather have move it, so moved by Vice Chair Fano. May I ask for something from the board? Can we have a unanimous second from the entire board to the item, if that's acceptable to everybody else? Anyone object to that? Ms. Gutierrez, you obviously are the leader of the pack, but I think we all are big supporters of this, so I think I'd like everyone to second except myself. I don't think I can. Everyone agree to be a second on this? Agreed. Aye. All seconding the item. The item is now open for discussion. Mr. Toledo or staff? No.
Schaefer.
Marie Schaefer. I
Ms.
apologize, Ms. Schaefer.
We have a presentation. It's included in the packet. If
Right.
anybody wants us to go through the presentation, we can do it.
Well, why don't we do this? Let's vote on the item. Let's do it
I think it's important. I think we should do the presentation.
first, or should we vote and then do the
I think it's
presentation?
been
Vote?
moved
Okay,
and
let's do the
seconded.
presentation. You heard. Very good.
Madam Schaefer, I think, if you want to do it from there, as long as someone can drive. It's in your, Is it loaded?
It is not.
There it is.
Yep.
Ms. Schaefer, board.
So this item is
Ms.
pursuant to...
Ms. Schaefer, before you begin, Ms. Gutierrez, I want this presentation to be full. However, we will lose quorum if Mr. Meyer has to leave. So can we vote on the item first and then do the full presentation? That's what I want to do. I do want to, no, I want the public to see the whole presentation. But once Mr. Meyer, once we vote on it, then we can go forward with the presentation, if that's acceptable to the board. Anyone have an objection to that?
No objection.
Thank you. And obviously, my concern is to make sure we have quorum. All right, all in favor of the item, the discussion is not closed. All in favor of the item, say aye. Aye. Any
Absolutely.
opposed? Hearing no opposition, the item passes. Ms. Schaefer, I want the full presentation, and I welcome all board members to ask any and all questions of the members that are still present here, and we're very excited about this entire presentation. Thank you.
So this item is pursuant to the board approving the cashback toll dividend program back in fiscal year 15 when the program was created. This is the second consecutive year for the program. The program requires that once all financial objectives and commitments are met, the authority on an annual basis would declare both a dollar amount and a percentage back to its toll payers who registered for the program. However, all of the financial obligations and requirements must be met, and the bondholders would remain in senior lien position first and foremost. So this is the results for fiscal 16. Just as a recap, and I'll move through this as quickly as possible, we have a fiscal year end July 1st to June 30th, and that's what we use to assess customers who pay tolls between July 1st and June 30th of every fiscal year. The financial statements are prepared on accrual-based accounting. Revenue is reported when it is earned, expenses when it has occurred. On an annual basis, we have Moore, Stevens, Lovelace, who is our external auditors, who come in and audit our books and records, as well as internal controls that we're following policies and procedures, and we have checks and balances in place. We have several external filings. We file with the Security Exchange Commission, and that's because we're required to, because we issue debt in the open market. We file with our trustee, and we file with one of our swap counterparties, JP Morgan, and then we file with the state of Florida for the single audit, as well as with the Florida Transportation Commission for certain objectives and requirements that we need to meet. And then finally, we submit all the financial documents with the rating agencies. The report that's prepared is called a CAFR. It's a comprehensive annual financial report. It's broken up into different sections. The introduction section, which talks about MDX, the financial section, which is obviously the most important section, the opinion of the auditors in this section, as well as the financials and the notes, and then the required supplemental information. The other information is our debt senior coverage section that we include for our bondholders. And then the statistical section includes the last 10 years of MDX's operational and financial information. So on a high level, we have what's called a statement of net position, which essentially is a balance sheet similar to a private company. It shows your current assets, your non-current assets. So from our standpoint, our current assets, which were $453 million compared to $330 from last year. Non-current assets was 145 compared to 295 last year. And then capital assets, 1.6 billion to 1.5 billion last year. Our current liabilities, about 90 million. What's included in the current liabilities is all our accrued expenses to our contractors and other expenses we incur that we hadn't paid as of the year end. And then we have the current portion of what's due to the bondholders for interest and principal payments. The revenue bonds is the long-term portion that's outstanding, 1.6 billion. And then other long-term liabilities, $3.1 million. So the net position overall is $646 million. The most, I think, from the balance sheet standpoint, we went through the numbers. The biggest number is the capital asset section, and I just wanted to bring out the point that this is all the infrastructure that we built over the years. $76 million is the right to operate that we paid the state, $76 million. We've acquired land of almost $490 million over the last 20 years. And then we have construction in process, and this means that we have work on the ground of active contracts, active jobs of $468 million. And then below that, you could see the capital assets we placed in service for infrastructure. We have some equipment, but the biggest number there is $720 million, almost $1 billion worth of infrastructure that has already been complete that's on our balance sheet. From the standpoint of the P&L, our revenues was $235 million for fiscal year 16. Our operating expenses was $83 million, which also includes depreciation of assets of $29 million. And then non-current is about $55 million. Contributions is $9.6 million, so the change in net position is roughly around $87 million. On our toll and fee, just to give you a breakout on the revenue, SunPass makes up the majority of the revenue, $178 million, and we have toll by plate by 45, and then fees and other recovery, about $10 million. Our senior coverage ratio for fiscal 16 is 218, and you arrive at that number by taking gross revenues less operating expenses to get to net revenues divided by senior debt, and that's how you arrive at your senior debt coverage. So what does that all mean? For year-end 16, the policy requires that we have a 1.5 times, no less than 1.5 times senior debt coverage. Our financing plan that we just put together for our bond issuance had a 198. When we finally finished the financials and reconciled everything, the actual senior debt coverage was 2.18. So it's 218 compared to what we projected at 198. Our toll revenue was about 10% above the forecast, and then traffic was about 4% above what the forecast was that our consultants had anticipated. We have a strong liquidity position, meaning we have a very good cash position. Our fiscal year 17, which is the current fiscal year we're in today, our work program is completely funded. And then some positive news from fiscal 16 is that the rating agencies, Moody's gave us a positive outlook during the year, and Fitch and Standard & Poor's reaffirmed our A stable outlook. So as a result of that, the impact to our cashback program, we had open enrollment in January through March in 16. We had increased registration of small businesses, families to 112,000 compared to 83,000 last year. The requirements were the same. None of the requirements changed. You must register for the program. You must be a SunPass customer. Its program is geared towards two-axle vehicles or commuter cars, and you must pay $100 in toll. We had roughly around 54,000 who will receive a cashback. 58 did not become eligible because they paid less than $100 within the program. So based upon the financial results that I just went over, we are recommending declaring a $5.5 million cashback to our customers, or 30%. This is the non-eligible transponders. Roughly around 40,000 of the 58 paid less than $50, so that was a significant amount. They may have paid, in other expressways, but they didn't pay on any of the 5 roadways on MDX. The eligible transponders, as you can see, the majority of the customers fall into receiving back about $120 or less. So significantly, you could see on an average daily basis, the majority customers was about $1.75 a day when you look at the average daily toll. So again, we have about 54,000 families and small businesses that will receive a cash back. You have about 1,900 that will receive a little bit more than $270. Majority of those are small businesses with multiple cars that spend some time on the expressway. So with that said, that is our recommendation, to recommend a $5.5 million cash back, 30% back to customers. And should this board approve the cash back, we would begin the process of putting the checks together and mailing it out towards the end of November.
That's the presentation.
Okay. I know there may be several board members who have questions and comments. If it's acceptable, I'd like to start with those who are on the telephone if they have any comments, and then we can go around the dais, if that's acceptable to everyone. Vice Chair Fano, do you have any questions or comments you wish to make? Hello?
No comments, thank you. I'm just very excited that this has been passed.
Great. Board Member Weinsberg, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I have no comments other than to congratulate the entire team. I've enjoyed this presentation during our committee meetings last week, and I'm glad that we're sharing it with the rest of the board and members of the public today to see how healthy our organization is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else on the telephone that I have not requested their input?
Mr. Vasquez was on the line, and he just got off the line.
Okay. Mr. Vasquez was fully informed of this presentation last week, so he's fully abreast of everything as well. Now I'll start. Excuse me?
This is Board Member Meyer. I not on the phone, as well as congratulations and kudos to the entire team on this one.
And I apologize for not recognizing you, Board Member Board. I truly apologize. I'm sorry for that. Thank you.
Meyer.
And Mr. Meyer? It's just mumbling up there. Sorry. Thanks, AJ. And I apologize again. Now let's go. Mr. Mayor, do you have any comments or any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a point again, as I did before, that of 112,000 people that we're talking about, 54,000 were eligible. That means that they spent $100 or more. And it seems to me amazing that 58,000 were not eligible. But of that, there were more than 40,000 people who spent less than $50 a year. So we hear on these, we heard in the past on all these talk shows and the people that are attacking MDX about how we were going to break families and people couldn't pay and afford to keep their jobs and all this thing. And what we're looking at really is a totally reasonable figure that shows that only 54,000 are $100 or more. And even though it's a very, very significant figure, it certainly is not the dire circumstances that have been painted before the legislature and before the talk shows. And I think it's just one more indication of the steady leadership, not only of our board, but to me, more important, of our executive director and his staff and the team that are keeping their hands in running this operation so well. And to the intelligence of Shelley and Maritza and the others who came up with this wonderful idea, which is really a breathtaking solution that nobody else in the country has done, and we're the first to do it. And congratulations to the mothers of this creature.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Gutierrez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Really, it's congratulations to the people of this community, because we again, and once again, when we make a commitment, we keep to our word, and we did what we promised that we were going to do. If there was funds that were not needed for the work program, that were not needed after we paid all the expenses, that would go back to the people, and rightly so. When we vote today on this item, we actually go back and reaffirm the commitment that we have with this community. We are just like them. We pay the tolls. We know that sometimes it hurts. And all I can say is this is a testament that, we're all at equal and we keep our word and our promise. Really, congratulations to the team spearheaded by our executive director and our CFO. They have done, once again, a wonderful job in making sure that the finances are in order. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Treasurer, I will do the, Mr. Treasurer, go ahead.
Well, thank you. I'll try to be brief. I think, again, this is a wonderful, repeat of a wonderful event that will continue to repeat itself over and over and to give back to our community. This was said in our committee meetings that if we were to give money back and reduce tolls that people talk about, it would be a fraction of a penny. This is a more succinct way of both maintaining our responsibility to our bondholders, to our financial obligations, and at the same time giving back to our community, which we understand hurts all of us. So this is the most succinct, expeditious way of doing something without the concept of lowering tolls, without putting this agency in jeopardy. So I think it is, again, the most expedient way of doing this, and I think it's a great program. Last comment I'll make is at the expo that we had this weekend, we had the secretary, Deputy Secretary Johnson, jump out of her seat, literally, when she found out that this is something that we're doing. So we got accolades, publicly from someone who doesn't even live in this community and says she's never heard of anything like that. So it's not just us tooting our horns or saying how good this is. You have, nationally recognized transportation leaders saying, wow, this is truly innovative. So that to me made me feel good. And when I say this, she jumped out of her chair. She jumped out of her chair and started clapping and was the only one clapping at that point in time, and really recognizing our innovative nature. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Mr. Walters and then Secretary Wolf.
Yes, the 58,000 people that didn't qualify for the program, how are they notified? Do they get something from us basically indicating that they didn't spend enough on our system?
I believe the notification's on their account when they register, so they will get notification when they log into their account.
Because I think this is a golden opportunity to educate at least 58,000 people exactly who MDX is and what our roads are, and I think we should try to
We actually-
maximize that opportunity.
We actually do not only the count, we actually do a blast email to those customers as well.
Anything else, Mr. Walters? Secretary Wolf, please. Thank you.
We clearly have had a good degree of success advertising this program in the past because we have a limited sign-up period that I believe will start again in January. And I don't know what we did to advertise it then, but it's good that enough people found out about this to register for it, because if they don't register, they don't get the rebate. However, at this point, is there something that we can do to make sure that our action in continuing the program receives some media coverage and people do know about it? We do this for goodwill, and the goodwill exists because people know about the program. So I wonder if we need to do a news release.
We actually have a
Oh, very
release
good.
that is going out or is about to go out, and we have the media here. We had actual confirmations from multiple media sources who said they would attend, but because of the tragedy that occurred this weekend, I think they'll just follow it along with the news release. But it will be posted on our website. This release will be going out to all the media.
Any other comments, Secretary? You know, let me begin by saying, you know you have a great board when all the things you wanted to say are stated by your board members before you get a chance to say one word as chair. So basically, an overwhelming majority of my thunder has already been taken. But I think there are some very important things to make clear. Mr. Mayor, when we're talking about less than $100, we're talking about less than $100 for the entire year. That's about $8.50 for a month, about $2.16 a week. So we're talking about what, less than one coffee from Starbucks, approximately, for those who are not able. And this is, as I've said before, a great poll to show the difference between fact and fiction. The fiction is those who are running around saying that our toll, that we are overcharging, that there are people who are being devastated by our tolls, and who are confusing what MDX does with other toll roads as well, or who are just making urban legend. More than 58% of the people, more than 50% of the people that registered are spending less than $100 a month on our, $100 a year on our tolls. Think about that. An overwhelming majority of those of the 54,000 that are going to get a rebate are between $100 and $200. That indicates that the urban legend about how high our tolls is exactly that, a legend. It's something people use to make comments, but it's not accurate in facts. Every day this week, you're going to hear about presidential tolls of 1,000 people, a toll of 500 people for Quinnipiac, 2,000 for this, indicating that this is going to represent the 100 million people that are at least are going to vote in November in this election. And these polls are supposed to have some significance. Well, I have a poll of 112,000 people who are using our tolls, who have a vested interest. And it shows that more than half are not spending spending $8 a month or less on our tolls. Last year, we gave rebates to 31,000 people, Mr. Secretary. This year, we're up to 54,000. It's almost a 100% increase. About what, without doing the math off the top of my head, around 80%? That's why I have an engineer next to me. He's able to do that in his head. 80% increase from last year. That's a testament to our staff and their effort to get the word out. And a testament, quite frankly, to all of us here who tell our friends and to speak about it. Secretary Wolf, I couldn't agree with you more that we need to get this good news out. Unfortunately, quite often, the media is more interested in the urban legend than about the facts. And it's one of the things that we need to push harder and harder and harder to get the facts out there, because what we do, our facts are true and accurate about how hard we work for this community and how well we do our job. Are we perfect? Not by a long shot. But we don't get golden sun passes. I pay the tolls just like everybody else, so does everybody on this board. We have to pay the same toll rate, we have to pay the toll amount, and if we are registered, almost all of us are, that's how we get our rebate. But if not, we don't get it either. And if we spend less than $100, we also don't get a rebate. That is an indication that we are doing this because we believe in our community, and staff does a phenomenal job for us. Please remember, ladies and gentlemen, that we don't get any assistance from the federal government, from the half-penny tax, or from the state on our roadways. All of the dollars we spend are the dollars we collect and we put back into the system here in Miami-Dade. When I spoke at the Small Business Conference last week, I wanted to emphasize that there, and I wanted to emphasize it here again. The greatest achievement that we do in MDX is to make sure our jobs are done right and to make sure the dollars that we collect for our clients, as Ms. Gutierrez has so eloquently imply that we should use for those who use our tolls, and you're right, they are our clients, is that we keep their dollars here. So for every dollar they give us, we make sure it goes back into the roads to better their situation, not to anywhere else. And that's an accomplishment. And the fact that we were able to save in excess of $6 million this year, I believe, is that correct, Ms. Schaefer? And we were able to be able to give that back is a testament to staff. So I want to congratulate staff. I want to congratulate this board. I want to congratulate Vice Chair Fano and Ms. Gutierrez for have been told over the last 8 years to think out of the box and the accomplishments that we've done, and we're going to continue to do that. And thank you all for the work. Any other comments relating to this issue? Hearing none, it has already passed unanimously. At this time, the only thing I believe we have an issue with, Mr. Council, is we're going to have to move the approval of the summary minutes to next meeting because I don't believe we have a quorum to pass that anymore. If we can move that to the next meeting as well. Is that acceptable, Council?
That's fine.
Okay. Let's go to Mr. Carlos. Do you have anything other than what we did in the shade meeting in your general counsel report today?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I would like to add to the board, if you have any issues with ethics that you want research or want some training on, I sent you an article that I found interesting about about sunshine law. I know some of you are involved in other boards, and I don't want to be repetitive. That's why we take advantage of giving the bond training, because I think that's very good training. It's interesting and it's different. So if any board members have any specific topics that they find interesting, I can do the research and send them out to everybody. And that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Ferre, do we have any report from the MPO representative today?
A 30-second report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
The MPO board is headed for a all-transit. I mean, that's the marching orders of 23 members, unanimous vote. And we're about to spend $50 million in updating 6 contracts. And I just came back from the IBTTA meeting in Denver. And I took the time to go look at their systems and to talk to some of the people involved. And all of the trains that were riding around town were all empty. And so I've asked Mr. Chairman for a backup report. And what's happening all over America is that in the case of Denver, for example, $5.5 billion were spent in doing these transit lines, and the ridership is very, very, very low. So guess what Denver is doing? They're building toll roads. They're building toll roads all over, and it's bumper to bumper. And the people of Denver who have this magnificent, wonderful, brand new transit system, and nobody's riding it. And it's creating a panic because guess who's going to pay for the operating cost? Well, the taxpayers. So my question through you to the board, and tell me please what you want me to do with the MPO is that we're headed in that direction. We're going to be spending billions of dollars to build transit systems that nobody's going to ride. And the burden of how we deal with cars is going to fall on toll roads in Miami-Dade County, as it has in the rest of the state of Florida. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ferre. Mr. Treasurer, other than the cashback that was presented by Ms. Schaefer, is there any other issues for the Treasury's report today?
I think we need to turn this over to Marie, but I think we need to give an actual report. We gave it at the Operations
Very well, go right ahead,
and
please.
Finance Committee, but I think part of the public
fine,
hearing. So
of course, absolutely.
With that said, turn it over to Marie for our Treasurer's report.
We also have, Mr. Chair, I believe you asked Doug Draper, who is senior underwriter on our last for funding, to prepare a presentation, and I think he has a brief presentation.
Sure.
On the Treasurer's Report, this is for the fiscal year 17, the 2 months, and as of August 31st, we posted roughly around $39 million in revenue, virtually flat to what the forecast is. On the expense side, $8.3 million. We're a little bit under budget, about $800,000. Interest expense is about $12 million again, pretty much on budget. Nothing really eventful to speak of. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer the questions.
If I may, board members, for those board members that have been here a while on the board, we used to have a dashboard that talked about, you know, how the different roadways performed and so. Because we've already had our system completely closed for about a year and almost 2 years now, we're working with our consulting firms. We're going to be presenting a dashboard on the different facilities so you can see the different performance of the different highways as we used to see them before, board members. So stay tuned. That's coming our way as a matter of information on our packets.
And board members, last week we had an issue that was, and I want to make sure I get the buyback of the bonds, I believe it's called, right? Yeah, the refund of the bonds, and we did this last week, and I had the opportunity to close these purchases, and I've asked Doug to be here to give us a brief presentation on some really exciting news, and again, another accomplishment of our staff and how we're saving the people's money. And in comparison to some of the controversies we've heard relating to bonds in the future, I think this is a great positive in showing how we've done well. Please, thank you, Doug.
Sure.
You should have copies.
We do.
Yeah. For those that don't know me, my name is Doug Draper. I'm a director with RBC Capital Markets. I'm joined by my colleague, Manuela de Barros, who's from New York and works in the transportation finance group at our firm. So real quickly, just to kind of cut to the chase here on the first slide, which should show page 1 of the presentation. Obviously, the authority's offering was met with very favorable market conditions. On the very bottom of the half of the page is really a summary of the present value savings, which was nearly $30 million. And in total, on a gross savings basis, the authority was able to achieve nearly $60 million of savings. That's 25% of the amount of debt that you're refunding, which is a target that in the municipal world, typically anything greater than 5% issuers are trying to refund that debt. So. And just to kind of provide a little bit of perspective, if you look at the top right quadrant of this page, we initially, and this is a quick story that I told at the last meeting, we initially met with, Manuela and I met with Marie in October of 2014 to discuss this refinancing idea. And at that meeting, you know, Marie had said something to me that I haven't heard in my 16-year career, which was, I'd like to figure out a way to pay this debt off sooner. And so, of course, we left that meeting and got with Randy, your financial advisor, and spent some time coming up with a structure that did just that. But I think that's a quick testament that demonstrates the quality of your CFO as a steward of the authority's monies, which is impressive. So you can see that when the board, we worked on this structure, the board finally adopted the resolution on May 19th of 2015. At that time, the savings were about $9 million, present value savings. And you can see where we ended up pricing. That blue line is really kind of where the interest rates were, very, very large reduction in interest rates between the time it was approved and the time that it was transacted. And so flipping to the next page, I think a big part of the success of this financing was the investor reception. If you look at we obviously were selling $95 million worth of bonds. Thank you. I don't know what we just did.
It's over there.
Okay, we were selling $95 million worth of bonds. The bonds ended up, we ended up getting nearly $1.4 billion in orders. So, of course, it's like supply and demand. We were able to lower the interest rates about more than 12 basis points on a repricing. And despite that repricing, we still had over $560 million in orders on $95 million bonds. So clearly a substantial order book with broad institutional investor interest. And so the next slide really kind of breaks those down, those investors. And we went through in the committee meeting, some fairly big detail, but I'll break it down here pretty simply. So the investors in white at the very top are those investors that in essence, bought or put in orders on the transaction based on this offering perspective, which, if you can see it, it's a very thick document that takes a lot of hours and people and time to create. Those in blue were those investors that viewed an Investor Net Roadshow presentation that Marie and Javier led with the participation of myself and Randy Topol that was released concurrently with this book. Those in light blue were investors who placed orders that were already existing investors of MDX. And then those in orange were investors that were existing investors that also reviewed all the documents. So in total, the final order book yielded participation from 12 new investors and 15 existing investors, which is great participation. And then finally, I'll summarize this slide here, which I don't know what's going on with this. Oh, okay. Finally, I'll summarize this. If you look to going left or right is really going back to your Series 2010 bond issuance. That range there of 97 to 113 represents the credit spread off of the index that municipal bonds price. And you can see in each one of your series of bonds that you've issued since 2010, the authority's been able to continue to compress the spread on its bond issue, which means lower interest rates, which means more savings or lower cost for projects. So it really is a testament to improved credit strengths and strong management and board stewardship and performance. I also note that in the past 2 years, MDX credit has been upgraded by all 3 rating agencies, and most recently, as Marie pointed out in her presentation, a positive outlook from Moody's. So these are really, really strong achievements for a municipal entity like MDX. And then finally, we get to kind of always report on the sale results and look like we're taking a lot of the credit, but we were really just a spoke in the wheel. This page really is the entire team that it requires to pull a bond offering off. And so some of those folks are in the audience as well, but it's been a really good team. So congratulations to the authority and congratulations to the rest of the team. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Does anyone have any questions for our staff? Mr. Walters?
The fact that all 3 rating agencies improved the agency's rating, that was because we showed that there was sufficient coverage in the revenue, in the toll revenue that we were going to be collecting. So that enabled the rating to go up and the interest we pay go down. So in my mind, that relates directly to the cashback program. In other words, by the tolls being where they are, it created a situation that allowed us to give money back to the users of the system. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of 2 different things. I mean, obviously, the tolls collected is toll policy from the board, but certainly lower costing debt, which is one of your overall expenses, those monies flow to the very bottom. And to your point, in 2010, looking back at that slide, the authority was A3, A minus, and it's now A2, AA, which are higher ratings. And so accordingly, you can see that those spreads have narrowed. So it's that continued stewardship and improvement in credit strengths has a benefit not only to the authority, the number of projects that it does, but ultimately to the cashback dividend program in terms of the amount of cash that's available at the bottom bucket.
It helps the agency and it helps the users.
Absolutely.
That's my point.
Yeah.
And I'll add that that service coverage is not just sufficient, it's very robust. 2 times coverage is very robust, that service coverage.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Walters? Any other member? Treasurer?
Just to echo what Cliff said, definitely, the more money we have available, the better we can spend and more efficiently can spend. And this contributes. It's all interrelated. So it's a very good point that you brought up. But again, I think much kudos to our staff, RBC, Randy, for having put together a wonderful opportunity for us to save a significant amount of revenue for this agency and obviously to make us more efficient. So thank you. Thank you to all of you for the good job that you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
I think this is just another example of excellence, and there are a lot of people that take credit for this, and RBC and Randy and Marie are up at the very forefront. Thank you, Executive Director Rodriguez, for your leadership.
Anyone who's on the telephone, do you wish to have any comments or questions to the presenters?
Just my feelings of thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vice Chair. Mr. Secretary, do you have any comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you again, Randy. And again,
Appreciate the opportunity to speak. We'll be around after the meeting if anybody has any further questions.
we love to be extremely transparent and, educating not only the public but ourselves on some of this stuff, because there's a lot of nuances that we're learning on a daily basis. And you presented it in a way that was very understandable. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it both. Thanks.
Thanks for the opportunity.
That concludes our treasurer's report. I think there's no more at this point. Anything else to report?
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. I understand today has been a little bit of a hodgepodge meeting. It was extremely important to this board and to me to make sure we had quorum to do the cashback and the consent agenda. I'm sure any of you who have ever seen the way I run a board meeting, I'm pretty tightly wound and not all over the place that we have been today. Mr. Director, we have 3 informational items. I know, can we move the first 2 to the next board? But I do want to hear on the IT initiative from the treasurer, if that's acceptable.
Mr. Chairman, the first 2 informational items are there for your information. I think Board Member Walters had questions at the Joint Budget and Finance and Operations Committee. He met with staff, and I believe your questions were answered satisfactory. Again, to any of the board members on any of those informational items, please let us know, and we'll be happy to sit down with you and answer.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, I appreciate the time. I know this is something that is important to a lot of us, and this is this IT initiative that we've been talking about. At the last committee meeting, the joint committee meeting, we heard of the IT initiatives. I don't know if staff is prepared today just to give a shorter version of that. And the reason is I think it's relevant to what we're doing, to maintaining our commitment to technology, and at the same time furthering that commitment by coming to this board at the next board meeting with a resolution to further that commitment. So, Watt, I appreciate your time and the quick presentation, and I would ask you to give a consolidated presentation. And again, it's furthering our commitment to technology. And not only we put our money where we mouth, or put our mouth where money is now, but we now have a working plan.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And yes, I'll try to just go through a few of these. I'll probably skip over a couple of them, but basically in May of this year, this board approved our budget to move forward with our IT initiatives, and we're doing that as we speak. For a long time, we've been talking about the future is around the corner. The future is 2, 3, 5 years ahead. I would beg to differ and say that the future is here now with all the initiatives that you see going on with automated vehicles, connected vehicles, and everything that's moving on. Just recently, there was an announcement by Cadillac where they're going to be coming out with their 2017 CTS with vehicle-to-vehicle communication capabilities. And you also have now Uber in Pittsburgh testing driverless vehicles, and driverless Uber is taking off. So we're in a moment where we need to be prepared for the future, and we need to embrace all the changes that are coming. Having said that, what we're doing with connected vehicle, we're doing with our technology is trying to improve on the safety and take advantage of the safety benefits that it's going to bring. Let me just go back real quick. Safety benefits, enhanced driver awareness, enhanced the advanced warning systems to our drivers, and being able to communicate between the infrastructure that we're setting up and and all this technology that's coming forward. And the way we're going to do this is, you can see by this map, the pink outline of the roadway from 137th Avenue to roughly the MIC. This is the area of 836 that we want to designate the smart road. And with that, and by implementing the measures that I'm going to point out in a few minutes, this is going to allow us the capability to have the vendors or the companies like Google, Uber, and so forth want to use us as a test bed and use our system to test their technology moving forward. And we want to be able to do that and bring that forward. And the way we're going to do it is by deploying the DSRCs, or what we call the short-range sensor communication devices, and also Bluetooth sensors. And by doing that, we will, and using onboard units similar to this little device that I'm holding up, we'll be able to gather all the data, communicating between the vehicles and the devices that we're going to be deploying to bring all this advanced safety, driver awareness information, sharing all this information between the drivers and our system. But we also want to expand that a little bit beyond the system. One of the things that we're going to be doing is taking the corridor along 8th Street between 137th Avenue and the Palmetto, and we want to create a loop, a grid, so that we can show how, working with our other partners, the Florida Department of Transportation and Miami-Dade County, through their signal division, is create a smart network where we can control how traffic is performing on any given moment and be able to provide real-time information to the drivers so that they can make choices on which trip they made that, or what trip they're going to make that's going to make their drive more effective and more efficient. So by doing that, we can showcase how, working together, we can expand this not only along the MDX system, but throughout the county as well. And again, our schedule to get this going, next month, we would like to bring a resolution to the board for approval to designate 836 Smart Road. At the same time, we're going to begin the deployment of the DSRC and the Bluetooth sensors on our system. We're looking at approximately 30 to 3 months to 6 months to get it all done. Our goal is to be able to come back in April by the next budget cycle to show you everything that we're getting from all these devices that we're deploying and how we're going to be using this information moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Juan. Mr. Chairman, I know you have some questions, but like I said, I appreciate Juan and the presentation and the time to listen to this item, because this is really the beginning of the future, if you will, for us and our commitment to technology. And I think we'll have some tangible evidence, data, that we'll be collecting in the next 6 months or so, and then moving forward, that will allow us to better enhance the services that we have and figure out ways to move traffic safely and expeditiously. So thank you once again, and thank you, Juan.
Thank you. Mr. Walters.
I'm assuming that MDX isn't the only group that's looking at this, but I'm reasonably certain that if others are, we're probably able to react quicker, because that's been my observation over the years. And I'm wondering, are you interfacing with other road agencies to avoid a situation like we had when SunPass came in? You had the Rickenbacker Causeway with their own system, the Broad Causeway with their own system, and you know, multiple systems going on. And I think what we probably don't want to have happen is have a technology that becomes suddenly incompatible with what somebody else is doing, whether it's FDOT or the Turnpike.
Well, the beauty of what we're doing is that we're trying to channelize all this information through right now what we're doing is that we're working through the Traffic Management Center and the Sun Guide, and that's really going to be the headquarters for all the information that we're going to be gathering. But in coordinating with the county and with the Department of Transportation, every agency is going to have their own approach on how they're going to be deploying technology. It's how we integrate it together, and working with the TMCs and I say TMCs because it's the counties and it's also the Sun Guide, but we can integrate all that together so it can work seamlessly. So we don't have, it's not necessarily that you need to have a holistic approach all across the agencies, as long as we can integrate how that information is being shared, and we're working on that as we develop this, we'll be working on that.
And Mr. Walters, to the first point, many agencies around the country, and in fact in Florida, are looking at ITS deployment and connected vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-infrastructure communications, because we're all facing the same issues in all urban areas. We got more demand and we got space to accommodate. So you got to figure out how to be more efficient in moving people and goods. And technology is obviously one of those avenues that we're taking advantage of.
Any other questions, Mr. Walters? Any other questions from the board? Very good. Thank you for that information. Oh, I'm sorry, Secretary. I apologize.
Yeah,
Secretary.
Risk of sounding trivial, I'll point out that the MPO and the county have a SMART plan, and I wouldn't want our SMART road to be confused with it. Is that just a generic expression, or are we calling our program SMART Road?
I think I'm going to have to refer to my IT manager. I think the designation of the SMART Road is a generic term. Ivan, please.
Yes, Ivan Del Campo, CIO and ITS manager for MDX. It's just a generic expression. I mean, it's not tied to the SMART with the county.
We don't need to confuse the branding. On a couple of the slides, SMART was all caps, which kind of confuses it with the SMART plan. I'd just stay away from going all caps on the SMART. But it is a generic term in use nationally.
Mr. Chairman. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Secretary, smart cities and smart plans and smart transportation was around years ahead of the SMART plan. Miami-Dade County has copied all these SMART all over the country, so it isn't that we're taking away from the MPO and Miami-Dade County. It's that we were way ahead using the word smart plans, smart roads, smart cities, and we've been using it for a long, long time. We didn't just invent that this year.
We'll make sure that we distinguish the SMART technology initiative from the acronym that the county is using for their SMART plan.
Mr. Chair? Excuse me, Mr. Treasurer.
I think it's a great point that you raise up. What I'll do is meet with staff and try to come up with a name that is all-encompassing of what we're trying to accomplish and maximizing really our initiative without creating confusion. I think it's your point, so we'll call it MDX Smart Roads, and maybe that'd be the... Thank you. We will work on coming up with a solution. I think it's a very valid point.
Ms. Gutierrez, do you have any comment or questions?
No, I'm in communication, but in this case, I'm going to stay shut. I do agree that we need to reconsider how we phrase what it is we're doing, because something else is out there that is using that as a big issue. I fully understand what Mayor Ferre has said, that the word has been around for a long time, but right now what is sounding in Miami-Dade County is that plan. So we need to understand that and move away from any confusion, especially when we're not involved with transit.
Agreed. Okay. Mr. Treasurer, any other comments? I'd like to thank, first I want to thank you for all your hard work on this. I know this is something that you have taken as a pet project, and you've put some tremendous effort, you and staff, into this, and on behalf of myself and the rest of the board, thank you for your efforts on that. I truly, truly appreciate it. You've shown some great dedication, and it's another part of what we do. We find ways that we can help this board in different ways, and you've, besides your tremendous job as treasurer, you've done great work on this as well, so thank you. Absolutely, it's the best volunteer board I've ever been on. Any other comments? Hearing none. Most of my chair comments I made during my comments about the cashback. I'm incredibly proud of today, and it was really important that we get that out. The only comment I'll make is on a personal note. We heard of the tragedy of Jose Fernandez, and I think it just emphasizes, I didn't know him personally, but I do know that it just shows how short life is. and how it should be really appreciated and taken preciously. It is a particularly difficult and ugly day out there. The weather is, the roads are wet, it's going to be raining, so I ask all of you that have taken time out of your difficult schedules to come here today on such a difficult day, and I mean that to our board and to all of you out there. Thank you for being here, and please be careful on the way home. Move to adjourn? Move, adjourn. Thank you again all. Be safe.
Thank you.